Hello, good afternoon. Today we'll look at the trends of Bitcoin. Also in light of the fact that the SEC is going to approve, reject or delay its decision on approving the VanEck Bitcoin ETF over the next 24 hours. To do this analysis, we'll go on our FinGraphs platform, which has quite a comprehensive cryptocurrency coverage. We'll first look at an investor's view of Bitcoin, or a combination of a weekly graph for the perspective over the next few quarters, a daily graph for the perspective over the next few months, and an hourly graph for the perspective over the next few weeks. The long-term downtrend since 2017 is still in place, but at the end of last year, the risk index had come down quite nicely, and the trend may be starting to reverse up. This is what we could see on a daily and hourly graphs, which are now in uptrend situations, and we will zoom on both these charts over the next few pages. First, with the daily graph of Bitcoin, which was very oversold late last year and early this year and has since accelerated up. For now, the risk index is not yet overbought, and this uptrend could continue over the next few months. Our targets also seem to point this way, with possible targets towards the higher 7,000s, which we just reached, but possibly up to 9,400 over the next 2 months. So for now, the uptrend on the daily graph still seems to be in place and could probably last another couple of months at least. Looking at the hourly graph, we can see that we are also still uptrending here. We probably made an important intermediate top with our risk index in the overbought zone here and our envelopes touching each other, but this uptrend doesn't seem quite finished yet and could extend at least one leg higher, possibly into the higher 8,000s, lower 9,000 levels over the next few weeks. So for now, if we look at the daily and the hourly graphs, Bitcoin is still heading up on our trend indicators. We also think it is interesting to try to understand the dynamics behind Bitcoins. And on this mosaic, we've put Bitcoin on a weekly and daily basis, the S&P 500, the US 10-year Treasuries yields, as well as the dollar to won exchange rate. And what we could see, and that's what we said in late 2017 when we expected Bitcoin to correct down, we thought Bitcoin was very much like a very aggressive growth stock. And that means a growth stock basically follows risk assets, higher and lower. And we could see that Bitcoin did correct pretty much synchronous at the same time as the S&P 500 throughout 2018, and has since rebounded quite aggressively along with other risk assets in the S&P 500. It also means the growth stocks that it is sensitive to rising interest rates. And as you can see, during 2018, Bitcoin was falling and interest rates were moving quite aggressively up. And it started to stabilize towards late last year, as if you could see here, as interest rates gradually topped out. Our view is that interest rates are probably meeting important support over the next month or so. They're quite oversold on the daily graph and could start reversing up into the summer. So this would not be a positive for Bitcoin, whereas a positive market, which we expect here, would be a positive influencer. Now, finally, we look at dollar won. As the trade war is getting into problems, what we can see is that the won is weakening quite aggressively versus the dollar, and which also means that there's probably a lot of flight of capital out of China and into dollars. But it does seem like this acceleration we've seen over the last few weeks is very similar to the one we have on Bitcoin, in which also could coincide with some flight out of won into cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. So we have two positive influences into the summer, the markets and probably the dollar won exchange rate. And on the interest rate front, well, we still moving lower, so that's positive for Bitcoin, but could soon find support and start to reverse up. If we take our three influences together, we probably think there's another couple of months to go on this Bitcoin uptrend at least. Now, finally, we look at Bitcoin versus other cryptocurrencies, so versus Ethereum, versus EOS, versus Litecoin, or versus Ripple. And what we could see is that we've seen quite an aggressive correction over the last few days, especially on Ethereum and versus Ripple. But in general, all these trends are still heading up. And so we would expect that Bitcoin continues to outperform, also possibly over the next 1 to 2 months. And hoping we could help you with your Bitcoin analysis, and in wishing you a very good week. Thank you very much.